Welcome, everybody. This is Leilani Cawthon with the Learning Council, a Grandmaster Edu Jedi, proud to be one. We've been doing these webinar series after we did a March 18th survey. We had 17,075 people respond within 4 hours. 50% of them all volunteered to be panelists. So it's just been the work of coordinating everyone and making sure the topics were going to be meaningful for all of you, and really just care about you and put together a forum where we can come and talk about issues and hear what everyone else is doing. It's really a special time, and we wanted to make everybody feel like you're important, and we hear you and we feel the pain. So now is a time where things are going digital quickly and there's tons of questions. So with that said, I want to introduce you to who we're going to be having speak today. And also we'll be framing this conversation. I'll be going over a few of the basics about the issues around utilizing teachers, and then throwing those questions at our panelists. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. But I do want to remind you, you can type in questions at any time in chat. Other than that, try to keep yourself on mute so that we can keep the background noise down. We're not sharing video today because it was kicking people out if they have home Wi-Fi and their kids are in another room hogging up Wi-Fi. So that's kind of the way we're going to roll with this. So we have today, and hopefully he'll arrive, Aaron Cook. He's on that school improvement team in Southern Oregon ESD, doing awesome work. Stacy Perez, who we've known for a couple of years, who's principal of Classical Academy, changed the name. She'll tell us what it is now, in San Diego, doing some of the best work in the nation that we've seen. Ivy Nelson, who's enthusiastic out of Belton, Missouri. We're happy to have met her this year. And Phil Jankowski, who impressed the heck out of us when we were in Michigan in the last year. So those four are going to kind of share and respond to these questions and issues, but we want everybody to feel really included. We're going to start with a little preview from Tice Miller, who's the CEO of Mobile Mind and was very kind to underwrite this Utilizing Teachers Remotely program that we have today. And they're seeing interesting things on the front line as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Tice so that he can sort of introduce you to what's happening. So go ahead, Tice. So if there's something going on with your sound, I am going to move on and then come back to you if you don't mind, to make sure that we keep the program moving. So Tice, when we see you join back in, we'll call on you. Okay, so just to frame the conversation for everyone, and then Tice, when he rejoins, can give his viewpoint. Last 2 years ago, we did this national survey. The same results came out in 2019, that teachers already had digital issues before these quarantines started happening. The number one was too much testing. So that's the one that is really causing a lot of alarm at the administrative level, because people don't have plans worked out of how they're going to do testing in the virtual environment unless they're using full professional grade courseware. So that's something we're going to talk about. The other thing that was really apparent is before we went into this quarantine period, the progress towards having full coverage of subjects with digital content was only 26.5% of schools nationwide had actually achieved getting all those lessons into some sort of central repositories, or even knowing that the teachers had created them maybe in Google Docs or Microsoft, but it was a pretty low percentage. So that's creating a lot of consternation right now, because if you don't have a fully laid pathway, you can't really issue it out to kids virtually. We also found, and this was improving year over year, but the time spent on lesson planning was huge. Now we're hearing districts saying that teachers might be spending 14-hour days working from homes, Zooming or Skyping all day, and then working pretty much all evening to try to catch up. So there's still a lot of time spent lesson planning, which causes us to say, why aren't you just using professional grade stuff? Why are you doing all the lesson planning internally? There's got to be a mix here that might be better for everybody involved. We don't know what it is for you, but you might want to look at that. And then the hours per week they were spent building all their own was also a huge cost structure that might have been better spent in other places. And the reason we say that more now and emphasize it more than ever as a learning council is because what we're hearing from everyone is that the social emotional guidance of teachers is needed in many places more than learning. The getting togetherness and seeing each other and talking together is really the number one priority. So we've looked at, and this will be great because I'm going to wrap Tice back in right after this, the whole group on campus labor load before we went into quarantine was already high and not very well inspected by a lot of leaders. If you actually made a list of everything a teacher was doing, it would be a lot longer than that one box shows. And most teachers have told us that, hey, it's probably 100 longer. That's like the short list. I was doing all the lesson ideas, the lesson plans, the scheduling, the small group instruction, the discipline, the everything. Then when you buried on top of that a whole lot of apps to learn and cause kids to learn, it was getting to be a little much. Then on the other side, you have the online world of the professional grade courseware, the LMS stuff, the hybrids, personalized direct instruction, chatbot teaching. There's a whole nother world on that other side. A lot of the biggest districts blend these two together. The smaller ones have a tendency to lean heavily on Google Docs or Microsoft as an LMS. Actually, 60% of schools nationwide have Google in place. There's another huge volume of Microsoft, but not everyone has even rolled out Office suites everywhere. So the thing we want to mention, because this is coming up everywhere, is the largest study internationally about screen learning was by the Association for Psychological Science. In 2017, they measured 120,115 15-year-olds. So you got to take this with a grain of salt for the littler kids, and found that the optimum is 4.5 hours of screen learning. That's good for teen brains. But let me just make sure you think that through. If they're already going to be doing some screen stuff after hours or texting around that, then you maybe don't want to take all 4.5 hours, because now you're going over the limit because of what they do in their private lives. So we're usually recommending about 2.5 hours of screen learning. So the rest of it is the screen that you might be using to create something. So the creative screen time should be independent of screen learning. So screen learning is roughly defined as the ingestion directly of knowledge. It's reading, it's doing the math exercises, watching the videos, versus attending a Zoom, which is a separate amount of time because you're together and the screen is being used in place of the physical environment, or you're creating, you're writing an essay, those kinds of things. That's separate screen time. So just give you that guidance. And then we usually are telling people that their mix of what they should be using should be 60% the professional courseware pre-built for time savings. Not everyone's doing this. This is just a rough guidance. And then 40% discrete digital objects, documents, courses, videos, things that require a lot of curation and detailed lesson planning because of the labor costs. And the reason that this is true for districts that are newly moving into virtual and remote learning is because of time. People that already had, some of their act together, like the people we're going to have speak today, that's not necessarily true for them. So speakers, these are the major considerations. What expertise are you finding was needed as you started this journey? Were you allowing organic learning to just learn tools on their own? Or were you training people? What is the acceptable level of lost time and lost learning levels right now? What is the demand for a full schedule in expectation? And therefore, what's the demand for expertise on you? I'm going to come back to these other four before I have my four speakers speak. And I'm going to go back for a second and have Tice join. Tice, are you ready to speak? Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yay, you're here.
Yes. Folks, let me just say again, my name is Tice Miller. I'm the founder and CEO of Mobile Mind. And before I tell you a little bit about us and what we're seeing in the market right now and in the K-12 industry, I just wanted to say, hopefully everyone is safe and hanging in there. This is a challenging time. So my best wishes to everyone. And so I'm very grateful to be with you all today and to hear some of these fantastic speakers as well. So I just want to spend a minute and tell you, if you don't know who we are, very simply, our mission is to ensure that all teachers effectively use their technology in their classroom instruction. In particular, our focus is on Google and G Suite apps. So Mobile Mind, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the company, and then I want to tell you what we're seeing and what's going on and what's changed in our world literally overnight. I think it's going to be very relevant to what everyone's experiencing in one way or another. So just a little bit of background, we started Mobile Mind in 2015. The entire mission was to create a modern professional learning solution because we felt that with all this new technology coming out, traditional PD wasn't always addressing all of the new challenges with mobile and cloud technology, the pace, the complexity, varying teacher difficulty levels or proficiency levels, time. It's just, there's a whole litany of things. And so we worked for 3 years doing research and development. on our Modern Professional Learning Hub. We partnered with Google early on, and our software has been live since January 2018. We are a certified Google Professional Development Partner. There's about 12 of those in the U.S. Of those, most of those are going to be your face-to-face trainer resources, some of whom we're partnered with quite a bit. But we're the only solution that is a Google solution that works right within Chrome, that is personalized, anywhere, anytime learning. So I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. A short video is better. If you're not familiar with us, Leilani, if you could just click on that. This is just a 90-second video telling you who we are and the problem we solve.
Google's G Suite and Chromebook one-to-one programs are revolutionizing education like never before. But despite many benefits for teachers, schools, and students, most schools are falling short of their implementation initiatives due to a lack of effective professional development. But how do you effectively cater to teachers with different technological skill levels, learning styles, and schedules? Designed specifically for Google use in K-12, MobileMind solves these challenges by developing the modern professional learning hub for schools that is personalized, practical, and incredibly convenient for educators. Unlike traditional professional development, MobileMind is cloud-based, so teachers are able to learn at their own pace whenever they have time in their schedule right from our Chrome extension. And since content is broken down into micro-courses with practical applications, progress can be made minutes at a time instead of committing to hours per session. MobileMind is tailored for individual users, accounting for skill level and previous knowledge to challenge each educator appropriately. Learners demonstrate competency by completing performance-based Google challenges and receive ongoing individualized feedback from MobileMind's team of certified educators. Finally, MobileMind's data and reporting allows teachers to view their individual progress while providing schools and district leaders with the key metrics they need to evaluate the impact of virtual professional development throughout their district. MobileMind's combination of cloud-based learning and tailored microcourses results in an average increase of 362% in the use of Google in educators' day-to-day teaching. Visit us at mobilemind.io and request a consultation and demonstration of our innovative professional learning solution.
This is actually the most relevant thing that we're seeing on how what our priorities have changed from pre-COVID to post-COVID. Essentially, what we at MobileMind focus on, there's really 6 critical challenge points to professional development when it comes to technology. And again, specifically, we focus on the Google and G Suite apps. And they're listed there, buy-in, and this is going to be very interesting on what we're seeing today. Buy-in, a lot of times with your teachers, they're just like, hey, I don't want to go to regular PD, sit and get type stuff. We know now, so we have to excite them. We have to do reward-based gamification, personalization for those folks who some teachers don't know what the cloud is, and some are very advanced. Also time, our attention spans are 3 to 7 minutes now. So it's important that we recognize that data and we let people learn at their own pace, anytime, anywhere, in very bite-sized practical chunks. Sustainability is key, especially now. Technology changes fast. So is the PD you're giving constantly changing with the technology? And then of course, logistics and resources more than ever, right? How do we do something anywhere, anytime across physical boundaries? That's no more important than it is today. And of course, how do we cost effectively do that at scale? So what I want to share with you, very interestingly enough, across our customers, the pre-COVID-19 priorities. And this is what has been very fascinating for us literally in the last couple of weeks. Real world example, school districts will typically come to us and say, hey, you know, we get it, about 20-30% of our people are really using our tools the way that they should. And so we know we want to augment with some newer and possibly better ways for them to do professional learning. So they say, hey, we're going to get some Google certifications. We want a reward-based teacher program. We'll start with, you know, we got 1,000 teachers. We'll start with 100 for a cohort with a slower rollout, and we'll increase that adoption over time. And what is fascinating that overnight, districts who are in that model have come and said, now we're in what we call a problem-based learning environment. Now it doesn't matter. I don't really care as much about Google certifications. That's just an example. Those are great, by the way. But right now I need all my teachers, not just a few, immediately using technology. And that is a huge mount to climb, especially some real world instances that we've seen. I don't have internet. I'm getting my first computer. And now within a week, we have to start teaching kids. Now that varies district by district, but it's a big challenge. So we're seeing that mass adoption at scale is suddenly the need. And so for us, just to know that what we're out there, if you find that you want some additional support, there's a couple of things that we've done. If you go to mobilemind.io/distance, and that's where that free resources is, and it's okay if you don't have the link, but It is a free content that we put out, links to help with Google. We're doing weekly webinars at no cost. And we also are doing consultations with our Chief Learning Officer and our PD team on how to prepare. None of that is at a cost to anyone. Additionally, what we've done is we always have the full access of Mobile Mind, where we are giving no charge for during this COVID time from March, April to June. But also we just instantly did some very fast software development for districts who just need an emergency. Hey, we need to get in with something very cost effective, super cheap in a sense, and make sure our teachers understand how to use the tools for distance learning. So that's something we're done, heavily discounted models. Additionally, you should know that if you are buying or have bought Chromebooks, Google subsidizes Mobile Mind. So if you've bought X number of Chromebooks, that entitles you to free licenses. So we're trying to shuck and jive quite a bit for the needs of our K-12 community. And but regardless, please visit the Mobile Mind distance page for some free resources that might be able to help you out. Leilani, I'm going to turn it back to you, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks. These are the four major considerations. So I don't want to go deep into them, but there's a structural consideration that remote management, like Tice, you were just talking about. There's morale. There's mixing different things in. There's role shift. Are you going to just do roll call? Community address. I know Stacy's going to talk about that a little bit. And then what are your policies? There's different discipline policies and those kinds of things. So just keep these in mind. I want to introduce you again. I don't know if Aaron's on the line yet. Aaron, are you here?
I am here.
Yay. So Aaron, I'm going to have you go first. Talk about your journey, and then maybe we'll go and address those four things, because what we're really talking about today is utilizing teachers. Like, what's happening and what are you doing and what are the big ideas?
Right. So I guess first, I've been working in virtual education since about 2010 and technological integration for about 20 years prior to that. I'm in Oregon and I work at Southern Oregon ESD. And I don't want to put too much for my background onto that. Right now I work at an ESD and I'm helping to do our region rollout for distance learning here in Oregon. But what I thought I'd talk about, are we just introducing ourselves now, Leilani? Is that it? Or
Yeah. And just talk about, we're centering this whole conversation around utilizing teachers, remotely, right, and the challenges there. And then if I show you back this earlier slide, this is how we've framed it, right? Like, right, what expertise do you have, your structure, what's your mix, right, policies? Yeah.
Right. And so it's a little different now in that I work, basically I do, PD is what we do at educational service districts in Oregon, and we support our districts in actually developing their teams. But I did work in virtual schools for about 8 years prior to that. And one of the big things that we noticed when we were developing our teaching staff was that almost no teachers that came to us came with this as their central framework. Like we almost never got anyone who came out of it. And that's actually really useful for this time, was understanding that how do you take a brand new teacher or teachers who you think they might be technically competent, but really don't have this skill set, whether they know to use pieces, or how do you bring up an experienced teacher with all this classroom experience and transition that knowledge into this environment. So there's several pieces that go along with that one, but when we're talking specifically about utilizing the teachers, what I would say, we actually, in what we're doing now especially, are encouraging teachers to come to us with whatever skill sets they have and not necessarily restricting them very much. Some of our districts are a little more so. They're saying this is the LMS, this is what it's going to look like. Other people are saying find some way to reach their students. And so I could say from my experience right now, we're not very locked down. We're actually in really an experimental mode with trying to say what seems to be working, and then how do we basically collect that from teachers, distill it into best practice, and give it back out to other teachers as kind of things that are working or ideas that they could use. Over time, our plan is probably to get more structured, but right now the idea of trying to change people's practices that they were comfortable with was not one of the main things that we were looking for. There's another piece of this though that I wanted to talk to that I thought other people might not have done a lot of this. One of the main things that I do is actually trying to get teachers, and I have, for when I was in virtual academies, is getting teachers to be effective at home. And I think this is one of the big pieces, is it really comes down to teachers will often not ask for things that would actually really increase their efficiency. And if you don't have conversations with them about their workspace at home, about how to lay that out, about how to use different tool sets, how to try essentially using teachers from home. One of the things we always used to say is try to have a place behind a door, so that if there's things going on in your house, if there's other things going on, they wouldn't necessarily affect you while you were teaching. And so we spent a lot of time coming down to talk about, what's a good learning environment? What's the appropriate systems for teaching? And some of the things we really look at is the investment that you might have in technology to set up a good home office is really important. We worked with special education a lot, and my special education teachers and I had lots of conversations around, if I have to be able to see the documentation and other pieces while I'm conducting a meeting, it's really difficult on a laptop screen. For those of you who are now for the first time using video conferencing and want to be able to have your face on there, you can see that you normally on a laptop, you don't get to point it in the right place, or you don't get to see your screen very well, or it's difficult to set things up. So I would really encourage people to have conversations with your teachers around what would actually make them more efficient to actually teaching. Some of that may include really looking at what is their workspace. Do they have a window right behind them so they're always backlit? Are they even thinking about these things? And try to set up dedicated workspaces. Ergonomics is really important. We control that when they're in an office or a classroom, but we're in the home, it's difficult. So sometimes we have to talk to teachers around, what kind of chairs you're sitting on or other pieces. And while these might seem trivial, or might think people will just work this out, teachers are very resilient in that they will try to make do with what they have. And that's actually really difficult, because the kids aren't getting the experience that you as an administrator, or you as a educational group that's setting up these teachers, you might really be able to make them far more efficient by spending some time in how do they set up their teaching environment. It will allow them to follow the interactions with students through chat better. It'll allow them to follow interactions that they're having that are nonverbal through their participant windows, different pieces that you can have based on what platform you're using. So one of the things that I learned is setting up their home office, it really is critical.
Well, you're giving me a big new idea for another company I have to found now, somebody who ships out like the whole setup.
Part of this really comes down to what technical groups, districts, tech directors, other pieces, what are they willing to basically invest in now that they maybe wouldn't invest in earlier? And my favorite thing that I tell people is that, I hate built-in webcams because I can never see the screen and see my face at the same time. But that's one of the big pieces that I want to talk about. The other one is really utilizing the teachers and finding islands of excellence and promoting those out so that teachers can see what other teachers are doing. Right now, a lot of them are scared about, I can't do this, or I don't know how to do it. But when they see something that one of their own partners does, they're actually more likely to reach out and see how they could do that, and then to potentially work from it. We are building because we're an ESD, we're not directly responsible for any specific district right now. We're supporting all of them, and they have different platforms. We're basically needing to find experts on those individual pieces and to structure them for doing webinars and virtual office trainings so that they can be utilized across our region so that any teacher is available to that. So, Leilani, awesome. I don't know if there's other.
No, that's awesome. I want to talk to you for hours, and I have some ideas, and I think I'm gonna have to circle back to you. Stacy, I kind of want to go across the screen now and have Stacy go next, but I also kind of want to shift it up. And but let's just do the normal and have Stacy go next. Stacy, tell us everything. We think you're so awesome. Let's go.
Thank you. So I'm Stacy Perez. I'm the principal at Classical Academy High School in Escondido, California. So we're in North County, San Diego. I've been working for the organization, which started as an independent study elementary program 21 years ago. This is my 15th year, 19th year as a parent, but they're grown now. So 7 years ago, I was able to create my dream, which was called a cyber cafe, and it was a big open learning environment to support the traditional in-seat classroom high school that we had in a 6,000 square foot open environment. We had teachers on board, and students would come in when they needed help. So it was more like a learning center. That quickly transitioned from the very first classroom we had, which was just going to be a speech meeting. And we found that the students were really craving the face-to-face. So 2 years later, we moved out of our 6,000 square foot building into a 12,000 square foot building and had the most amazing adventure for 2 years in this historic building in downtown, where students were clamoring just to come face to face using online curriculum. Fast forward now, 2 years ago, we moved into a 48,000 square foot building, which happens to be the original building where my boys went 19 years ago. It used to be a church. It's an odd building. It's got 2 buildings, and it's also downtown, where we were able to become more traditional. So 2 weeks before the shutdown, we actually removed the name online. So we were no longer Classical Academy Online High School, and we have become Classical Academy High School Personalized Learning Campus. So we put the campus spin on it. What that looks like for students. On Mondays, my teachers have always worked remotely. So they work from home on Monday, providing feedback, mentoring, grading. The expectations are set up that teachers will get everything done on Monday by 4 o'clock. And that's worked really well, giving those parameters for them to work from home and have the time. And like Erin said, the setup at home. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we offer workshops. So that's like a traditional classroom. We do use Summit Learning as our online platform, so that looks a little bit different than a traditional approach to education. It is project-based, and students can work on their playlists at any time. They can work on their projects and checkpoints, but they have the teacher support through the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Students are required to come if they have a science lab. We are a college prep high school, so we do offer A to G courses through the Summit Learning platform, as well as AP classes. So that support for sciences, foreign language, visual and performing arts all happens on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then Friday in the mornings from 9 to 12, teachers aren't expected to be on campus until 9 o'clock, and we have office hours. Those office hours are for students from 9 to 12 by invitation or appointment. So there's some small group collaboration. There might be a makeup Socratic seminar, a makeup lab, or students that just need more support. Possibly our students with IEPs might have more of their meeting their minutes on Fridays. And at the same time, we offer by invitation or appointment is parent power hours. And those are also from 9 to 12 on Fridays. So really supporting the parent partnership piece, which for us, that's been the easiest transition to working remote, is that we already have the parents on board. They've already been through a lot of training. If we see them struggling, we invite them in and say, how can we support you? In this transition time, I've had principal virtual coffee chats every Friday. Now I think I'm moving them to Wednesdays, but once a week, where I invite parents to come in and just ask questions and have that face-to-face time. Leilani and I have talked a lot about that. That's been the biggest part of our program, is the face-to-face. So moving to full distance learning model was very easy for us. The teachers grasped it right away. The parents wanted it immediately. We did have a 2-week break, and then we came back for a week. This week we're on spring break, so we're not supporting students this week, but we're ready to finish out the school year with the distance learning model that we've already implemented. When we did close down, and that was due to ADA and funding, we needed to wait to see what they were going to do for independent study schools, because we are an independent study charter school. So students cannot be on our campus more than 80% of the week as it is. As we were waiting for that, the parents were just like, can't we do this? We already have the testing remotely set up. We already can provide feedback. The teachers can work from home. The students can continue to learn. So when we opened back up with our distance learning model this past week, out of 400 students, we had 300 students taking tests at home the very first day. And we thought that would kind of go downhill. It didn't. It continued, 300 per day, that they were just wanting to get through the content and work on their projects and get that feedback. The community is really, really important. The social emotional side, the school counselor and I both make videos weekly just to be there for the students, letting them know, hey, we're struggling too. This is a difficult time, but we're here to support you and we can get through this together. We know that they need those touch points. So although we have the physical environment, we started as a full online program. We've kind of transitioned back to that, and now we're back to the online model.
This is awesome, Stacey. I always characterize you as like one of the only places, there's a couple of others in America that are the closest to what we now are calling Uberization of learning. You're a backwards engineered model, digital first, and then physical intersected with it in a little bit more precision way. We could probably have 3 more webinars with you and not learn everything. But this is awesome. You have one question, and then I want to move on to Ivy. Mike, do you want to unmute and ask your question about tools?
I can read that in the chat. What are the best tools for you to use for feedback to students? Our mentoring piece, our students set goals every week in a calendar that's on their platform. The mentoring piece is the most important feedback that we can give. And that feedback isn't necessarily to their education. It's to their social emotional well-being. How are you today? What's going on? How's your dog? What'd you do this weekend? Having real conversations over that 4-year period with those students that come to us for a variety of reasons. But as far as the feedback in the platform, educationally, we do map testing. So we make sure students are placed at the right level, as well as filling in those Swiss cheese of learning. And we try to fill in those holes because they're usually coming to us from different programs. We use checkpoints. We don't provide grades until a project's complete, so they're given constant feedback 2 to 3, 4 times. Also, when they're taking content assessments, which are their 10-question quizzes that get them through an objective, they pass those when they get 8 out of 10 correct. So they can continue to take those quizzes as many times as they need to. The first 2 times are kind of the freebies. You get to use your notes, you get your notes checked, and you actually take the quiz. If you don't pass it with an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10, by the 3rd time, you're required to meet with the teacher. And again, that's that face-to-face time of, hey, you're missing something, or we need to fill something in here. Maybe your notes aren't what they needed to be, so we're giving that personal interaction with the student to give them feedback. And then at the end, we have a showcase. So instead of having a final exam, we say, you know what, come in, bring the project you didn't quite hit the mark on, and you want extra credit on that one project. You're going to come in and you're going to display that to the community, kind of like a science fair. And these kids that are introverted or they're not public speakers come in and have no idea the incredible public speaking skills they have just to present something they know. And they're doing that all to get this little 5% extra credit boost, which for us is just reiterating, hey, you can do better. We all know the rubric. We know what you're shooting for. Let's fine tune this. And then you get to teach somebody else. So you actually present it to someone else. So as far as feedback, it's constant. It's in a variety of ways. But I think the mentoring piece is the most important.
Cool. And I see another question. Let me come back to you because I want to get to Ivy and Phil and then open up questions again. So Ivy, you go, let it rip.
All right. So first off, just to kind of introduce a little bit about our district, I'm the Education Technology Manager for the Belton School District. We are a public school district on the south side of Kansas City, Missouri, not Kansas. But we are 1-to-1 in our secondary schools. And then we have one elementary building that is 1-to-1 with devices that go home. And then the majority of our elementary students, though, are not in that environment. And so as we are in this place of growth where we have some different areas with more technology, it's been a challenge for sure while we've transitioned to distance learning. And we're not virtual learning because not everyone has the technology. So as we're growing and as we're getting the resources for everyone, we have to be creative about how we're doing it, and we have to be flexible from building to building and class to class. And so that's a little bit of background for our district. And when we first went to distance learning, we had our spring break, and then we didn't return from spring break. And so we had some preparation time for teachers, and because we kind of went into it knowing that this could very well be the landscape, not coming back from spring break. So we had a teacher professional development day the last day before our spring break. So we actually canceled school for students and gave teachers a day to plan and to work. And that was very beneficial. And teachers were very happy to have gotten that day. And then we went on spring break, and then we didn't come back. And so teachers had prepared 2 weeks worth of lessons, and now we're farther than that. And so we have been told the end of April for us before we might return. So, preparing for longer term than that even, we have begun instituting some professional development for teachers. And the first 2 days of this week, Monday and Tuesday, we provided time for teachers to get some trainings and things like that. So we actually, if I can screen share. All right, so I am sharing a Google Doc that we use with our teachers and staff, and this was optional. So again, as we're working with teachers, we want to provide every opportunity and all of the resources and things they need, but we also don't want to overwhelm. And so these were 2 days of optional PD. So teachers were still working, they were still prepping things and doing the work that they need to do, but we wanted to provide some opportunities for them to do some more professional learning. So two of the big things are the video conferencing. So we use Zoom, and then teachers also have the option of Google Hangouts, and Zoom has been by far more popular with our staff. And then another one was screencasting. So those were two really urgent technology needs that our teachers shared. And so that's quite a bit of our sessions here. But then we also had some really good sessions. We had them led by our technology integration team, our instructional coach team, some library media specialists, some teacher tech leaders, and then we had a counselor share about self-care for educators. So that social emotional level for our staff, which then translates back to our students. So we had some wonderful participation, even though it was optional, and then wonderful feedback about how beneficial these topics were. And then we recorded all of the Zooms, and we did them through Zoom. So we recorded the Zoom meeting with all of the teacher participants, and then we're linking them here. And we also have some pre-recorded sessions linked at the bottom. And then we have a professional development course in our Canvas LMS that we will be providing all of the resources there as well. So until we can get those all built into Canvas, we're just replacing the Zoom links with the recording links. And so that was a really successful way to use our expertise.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Then, yeah, but it was great. And we really, I mean, it was just a really great day of filling our buckets and connecting and really getting, you know, teachers have so many questions right now and so many things with this sense of urgency, and it was so wonderful to make those connections and to answer those questions. And our director of school improvement said by far this professional development was some of the most immediate turnaround. So we saw teachers who immediately took what they learned and used it the next day with students. And there's not a whole lot of professional development that you can say that about. So that's wonderful. And then as far as the structure, kind of what I think it was Phil that was saying about the teachers having their own area set up. And so they have their, you know, their teaching area, and then helping students do that as well. And part of one of the topics that I presented on was helping parents with distance learning. And that's a big question for teachers that, you know, you have all these kids now that are home with their parents. And so how do you help the parents to do this whole process that's new to everyone? And so kind of what that looks like for our students, and helping the families have an area set up for their students to have that learning environment, just like teachers have to have their teaching space from home.
Right.
And then as far as the time requirements, we have teachers with chunks of time every morning and every afternoon that are kind of office hours, where if a parent or student reaches out to the teacher, they should get a pretty immediate response from teachers there. And so that's been a good opportunity for our families. And then also for me helping teachers with different tech needs and things during those times. And then we also have the student learning time limits, Leilani, that you were showing at the beginning, and about, you know, 4.5 hours for a student. And I think that was a high school student. So we have a different structure for our different grade levels. And so a breakdown of teachers, make sure you're only assigning X amount of time work per day for a student to complete. And that has helped immensely with teacher planning. And it's also been a relief for parents, because when they're trying to work from home and they're trying to juggle everything in the household, and then hours and hours of instruction for their child on top of that is just not feasible. Right. So that's been a really helpful thing as well. And then the last thing that I will talk about is with the structure topic, the morale. I'll mention Zoom again. Our staff jumped at the chance to use Zoom. We've used it for professional development with staff, and teachers are doing Zoom meetings with their students. And we have been very, very cautious about any software that we use anyway. We thoroughly vet everything for, federal compliance, safety and security, data security, all of that. And when we first decided to use Zoom, we made sure that it was going to be safe. And then we have different settings that we have our teachers use. And so you may have seen on the news all of the Zoom bombings and things like that, where people are getting into Zoom meetings where they're not invited and causing a ruckus. We have had no instances of that to my knowledge, because we have helped our teachers to don't post links publicly. Use the waiting room feature so that you can only allow the people who are supposed to be in your meeting into your meeting. And
Right.
so we have had teachers so excited that first week back with students when they got to have a Zoom class meeting, and my inbox was flooded with teachers so excited that they were able to do this. They sent me screenshots of the gallery view of them with all of their students, and one
Super
teacher
cool.
in particular. Yes, it was so heartwarming.
Cool. We'll come back to that. I do want to let other people know that besides Zoom, Shindig, a site called Shindig, is on the rise, as well as the one we're using right now, GoToMeeting. Phil, let's hear from you and Armada. I've always been so impressed with you. You go.
Okay. Yeah, just to give you some background, Armada we are in Michigan. We're about 30 miles north of Detroit, right where the metro area falls off into farmland. So that gave us some pretty good challenges, because we're 1,750 kids spread out about 74 square miles, but a third of our district does not get internet with any type of reliability. So we had to really think things over. We had done a lot. We had used Summit, just like Stacy had mentioned, coming into this, and we were actually making a transition to another system called Empower. And we kind of had some heads up from the governor's office that this is the direction that they were going, because Detroit was such a hot spot. Thankfully, our teachers had their systems pretty much fleshed out. It was just now, how do you go from seeing your kids every day to not seeing them every day? What worked out really well, we use Google Hangouts because we're a Google district, or Google Meet now, and our principals did virtual trainings with the teachers to kind of explain this how it works. They picked it up pretty well. Then we just kind of gave them some base guidelines. Basically, each teacher, 90 minutes, we want you to give 90 minutes of work that they can do kind of on their own. And for like the secondary level, they can do a little bit more at the elementary because they only have one teacher. And then to do office hours each week, because we really, starting off especially, kind of like what Ivy mentioned, that social emotional thing. We told our teachers, we don't want you to move forward right away. We want you to take the first 2 weeks to kind of go back and just make sure, cover content, things that they've already done, because this is a new normal for students. We want them to kind of get used to that. And just like Ivy mentioned, the first office hours, so each teacher has office hours once a week. So that there wasn't this overlap. We did by subject basically, so English on Monday, math on Tuesday, and so on. Just the outpouring of emotion from kids when those office hours started to be able, especially with like the younger kids, like kindergartners and first grade students, just in tears because they get to see their friends again, and they're afraid of what's going on because they see the news, they see their parents are home, and so on. And that was just a huge transition for the staff, and was really kind of reassuring that what they do and their role in the lives of their students was tremendously important. We also had to develop a thing to pick up our the kids that might have been struggling. So like we tasked our parapros to make contact with students who are in 504 plans. Our special ed teachers made contact once a week with our IEP students. And we basically said, we're going to focus on what our power standards are. We're not going to try and cover everything we would have covered or all of those things. We use the 5E instructional model. We want them to really give kids opportunity to explore things in depth and to give them the ability to give feedback to kids and those kids to share things, whether it's recording something where they're explaining something to their parents, whether they're taking a picture of an assignment that they did or a project, or they were doing something in their backyard, and that's gone over very well with the community and with the staff. And our goal has been to make it less about compliance and more about like quality learning opportunities for students. And what we've kind of done now, because we're on the same thing, we had 2 weeks off, spring break, and then we have about 9 weeks left. So we're breaking it into three-week increments. And we're just saying focus on a 3 week. If you can do something where you can make sure you're giving feedback, check in with those kids over it. And it's worked very, very well so far. They've transitioned because they don't have that natural, when you're in a classroom where you have that intuition of you can see a kid that doesn't get it, just make sure you're giving feedback and make sure you're checking in with those kids.
Yeah, I think that's really, really, really important. I love what all of you guys have talked about today. I think we're getting close to the top of the hour. So I have a couple questions here coming in from Sheila Groover. Sheila, do you want to take yourself off mute and ask the panel?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my first question was based on what you all have learned from setting up these distance learning models. What would you, from your experience, consider to be the 1 or 2 foundational steps that should not be overlooked?
This is Ivy talking. I kind of jumped into the chat already with the answers to mine. And number 1 would be really clear expectations for staff and students. So what parts of their job will look the same and what will look different. And then the second thing would be making and maintaining contact with students, either through the virtual meetings, phone calls, something to make sure that every student is okay. Within the first week of virtual learning, distance learning in Missouri, the state child abuse hotline calls dropped by 50%. So our superintendent communicated that we need to be making sure we are getting in contact with every single student. And as of yesterday, I heard from one of my directors that we have over 4,000 students in our district and only 11 families have not been able to be reached. So that's huge, just making sure that we are guaranteeing that all of our students are still safe and okay.
Cool. Anyone else want to respond to that?
Yeah, this is Aaron Cook, and I did type some things into the chat, so hopefully you can get those. But the 2 main pieces is ensure that your teachers have the tools they need to be successful. I think it's overlooked, and I think it's something they need to look at. Basically, simple things that you're not thinking about. I'm framing this from not people who are always going to be virtual teachers. I'm framing it for the ones who are doing that right now, even though they may go back to a brick and mortar environment. Right now, they're needing to do things like do a speed test on their internet to make sure that they actually have the bandwidth they're paying for, and is their space conducive to teaching, and then do they need different hardware to be successful. Spend a little bit of time walking through some of that. Getting back to us is probably pretty easy, and I can help out with some of that if people want after the time period. The other one, and this is really big, is support your teachers' mental preparedness. Many of them did not sign on for doing this right now, and so encourage them to have fun in staff meetings and try to model that as a leader. I think is really important. Encourage them to interact with their fellow staff online to kind of break up the isolation, because most teachers really, that's what's killing the ones that I'm talking to. It's like they're fine with the technology, but it's the idea that they're just so isolated that's really feeling weird right now. And to provide, this is one of the big ones, provide office hours with your integration specialists, because what they can do is they have kind of a set and they're reaching out for the pulse and they're providing things. But just for someone to be able to say simple, like, I'm having a really difficult time figuring out how to get my kids into breakout rooms. Can you just walk me through some of those things? So try to find some open time or some time that people can have scheduled to be able to go to get some what's called just-in-time PD around the things they're doing.
Yeah, and I'd like Tice to jump in here because I know Tyson's whole team is experiencing this. And then Phil, maybe you can bring it home and wrap us up. So Tice?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Thank you. I think one of the things that we see quite a bit of is just, and this has been mentioned throughout, is to remember that tools are tools, right? Everything that we do, at least when we're doing our PD or our micro-learning PD around Google, is the pedagogical relevance. And how are you using this in instruction? So it's not just a how, but it's also the why. And again, that may seem like common sense, but so many times we see technology getting dumped out in various tools and saying, okay, this is how you do a video call, right? That doesn't really tell the whole story. The other thing is realizing that distance learning, and I've dealt with this with actual parents that we know as well, is that distance learning isn't just a video call. For example, if you have someone first using Google Forms for the first time, you need to really let them understand how you would replace that with a manual quiz, right? And really just follow basically like the SAMR model, for example, because there's all these hidden nuances. And one of the things we've seen, for example, is if you don't teach someone how to use a tool like Forms, for example, for a test, let's use that as the example, all of a sudden someone forgets or doesn't realize they need to put a mandatory name field, right? And then it comes back, you get 32 test responses, and you don't know who did what. So it's the nuances of understanding how to replace the tools at the very basic level, especially for the late bloomers. The other thing I would say that we've seen, and we've really tried to give our guidance to districts who felt very rushed, is putting too much too early, right? Especially understanding where your teachers' levels are. So late bloomers, middle of the road, high flyers, you have to teach at that level. Otherwise, you're going to completely overwhelm folks who are just getting started. So those would be the things I would really take to heart and really understand the teacher proficiency levels and how they're learning the tools, and let them get their sea legs first before you dump too much on them. So hopefully that's helpful. Thanks, Leilani.
Yeah. Phil, make one more comment and I'll wrap us up.
Yeah, basically same thing. Keep contact with everybody, and most of all, reassure your administrators and your teachers and the students that things are not going to always be perfect, especially when it comes to technology. There's always hiccups, because I know a lot of teachers, if they have some trepidation with it, they're like, oh, this didn't work exactly right. You're doing the best you can. In times like these, it's important to make sure that you're being that stable factor for your students, and administrators are the stable factor for their teachers, and so on. Just reassure everybody that we're going to get through this. Things will be better, and just to make sure that that social emotional aspect is so important.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And here from Learning Council, I just want to make sure you guys all know, we love all of you. We love what you're doing. The stories are so heartwarming on every one of these webinars. I encourage all of you to go back and listen to the earlier ones that we've done, the recordings, join the other ones that are coming up. We're just now going to send out a survey on another tour, because we're learning as we go and we're finding more topics need to be discussed. So, thank you guys all so very much for joining. Erin, you're amazing. Stacy, you're a superstar. Ivy, we just love the heck out of you. Your enthusiasm and what you're doing for your schools are great. And Phil, thank you. What you've done and what you've emphasized today has been really helpful. And I hope everyone takes these lessons to heart. And thank you. And again, please join our other seminars that are coming up. Go back and watch the earlier ones. There's been some stuff said in earlier ones that is also very instructional. And we'll keep chugging along. We can do this. We're America. And we love you. And thank you so much. So at this point, I'm going to end the recording. Hope to see you all again soon. Erin, thank you. Stacy, Ivy, Phil, thank you.